It is exactly 9:23 a.m. Thank you for staying with us. This is News and Views on Salam Media. And a very big thank you to you, Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, for your patience. You are a political analyst and you're going to weigh in on our next story, which obviously the headlines read as follows. Cash-strapped ANC considers selling of assets to pay off a 500 million rands in arrears. The draft financial report delivered by the ANC Treasurer General Paul Mashatile, this was to the NEC at the weekend, obviously indicates the dire strait of the governing party's finances. How have they reached this state of having absolutely no finances? It's really very worrying, isn't it? Because they are the ruling party. What has gone so horribly wrong? Dr. Breakfast, good morning, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Well, it's an open secret that the ANC has been struggling financially to the extent that it has not been able of late to pay its staff. And some of the staff members have even posed a threat to the mother body to say that they are going to protest at the upcoming conference of the ANC if their demands are not met. I think the problem started with the new legislation that was introduced. I can't remember when it was. That demands that party donors must declare how much they
Ah,
are contributing to political parties. So now the problem is that if that relationship is done transparently, it means that as the public, we can connect the dots in terms of who is doing business with government and then make linkages, whether that is not because a particular company donated in the past to the ANC, no wonder it is receiving business from government. So that is the problem. So the ANC has been dealt with a blow by that legislation, and because of that they have been found wanting in terms of financial matters.
so obviously funds have dried up, but that also leads me to a possible future scenario or problem. Let's assume, and I think we're all hoping that that would in fact happen, that the ANC loses power in the 2024 elections and we have a coalition government in place. How's this ruling going to impact on them? Because the same rule
Yeah,
applies,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yes, of course. You see, the challenge that the ANC faces is that I think throughout the years since the ANC came into power, it has been doing business also with government, despite the fact that it is also the government of the day. For instance, the ANC does have a company called Chancellor House that it established to be a business venture. So that has been a very unethical maneuver because, I mean, the people who are in power, who are ministers and so on, are deployees of the ANC. So those people decide which businesses must go to a company that is owned by the ANC, which strikes me as a conflict of interest in my opinion. So if the ANC loses power, which is something that is not far-fetched in the upcoming general elections, it will be a blow because it means that they will not have access to the state machinery and also influence how businesses are allocated to certain companies, meaning that they won't also benefit as well.
And the future coalitions, if that is our most likely scenario, are they also going to be impacted by this ruling, or do you think they're pretty independent?
All political parties are impacted by this ruling because all political parties, they need money. I mean, political parties, they've got their own personnel, they have their own researchers, and they have to be paid. And if you don't pay your workers, then they're going to protest, and that creates a negative perception that you are not treating your workers fairly and squarely.
So clearly, whatever the outcome is in the 2024 elections, the general elections, whoever is in power they're going to have to apply their minds to the situation, because you need money to run your party and the government, obviously. So they need to look at what's happening around globally, which is the best model that can and will work for South Africa. But let's leave that story aside for the future. Um, we understand that Paul Mashatile has suggested that the ANC has got 5 billion rands worth of assets in London and in Zambia, and they're looking to sell these off. Do you think it's a good idea for them to sell off and pay off all of their debt? The other very worrying concern is obviously the workers, their pensions, their tax, etc., hasn't also been paid over since 2018, which means that if they lose their jobs now, or whatever this, or if they decide to leave the employer of the ANC, they won't be able to go. They won't be able to claim from UIF. They'll really be stranded. So where do we sit in this matter? Is it a good idea that ANC sells off their assets, and should they be settling their debt? Is it the best? Is it the best way forward for the ANC?
Well, first of all, let me start by saying that the way things are at the moment is not the way things should be, largely because the ANC is a ruling party, and the ANC is the one that has introduced a number of legislative requirements for workers to be empowered. One of those pieces of legislation is the basic condition for employment. Mm-hmm. So, of all political parties, you don't expect the ANC to fall short of adhering to the regulations of government, because it is the one that is governing the country. So I was taken aback, I for one, by the latest developments that the ANC as a party failed to pay UIF for its members. You don't expect that to be done by the ANC. So the idea that the ANC now is grappling with of selling some of its assets in order to settle the debt, I don't think that it is a bad idea, so long as their workers will be paid. I think the fear that they have is that if they don't pay their workers, they might be embarrassed in the upcoming conference of the ANC, because the workers have posed a threat in advance that they're going to protest outside Nazareth.
Absolutely. Okay, we spoke about the UIF, but it also impacts on the workers' provident funds and medical aid contributions, which is truly a blow for the workers. So if anybody has an emergency, a medical emergency, they won't even be able to go to get the necessary care from their service providers. We hope that this does get resolved sooner rather than later. Mashatile also mentioned the possibility of reducing staff. I don't know how viable that would be. However, he is talking about reducing staff complement and encouraging some employees to withdraw their packages. I'm not quite sure what does he mean by that. But then we also have to look at the other issue, and perhaps that is whom he is actually referring to, the bloating of the party's salary bill. I understand that NEC members are paid the equivalent of deputy ministers. Now, that is crazy. Isn't that absolutely crazy?
Well, the ANC, in my opinion, is using a neoliberal model in the sense that they are trying to reduce their expenditure. That is called fiscal discipline. It's the same thing that they are doing in government. The way they are trying to reduce the expenditure of government in order to pay off their debt. So now they are doing that at the party level. I think it's quite sad that some people are going to be casualties out of this process, because most of the employees of the ANC, they also have families to look after. But at the same time, I mean, the party is struggling to generate funds in order to pay off its workers.
So that is a possibility, and that's the right way. You believe at this stage they should be looking at, you know, chopping headcount possibly, and then also sell off their assets. When we look at the 5 billion rands worth of assets, is it in fact, do those assets, does that money in fact belong to the ANC, or does it belong to the people of South Africa?
Well, I don't know how those assets um, were generated by the ANC. Whether is it something that the ANC acquired legally or unethically, I cannot confirm that. But
Right.
if the assets they belong to the ANC, I don't think that there's nothing that stops them from selling off those assets. I think the key thing at the moment is to pay off the employees, who have been protesting and also refusing to perform their duties as employees of the ANC.
Would I be correct in thinking that come the 2024 general elections, that the ANC, loses its position? We have a coalition government in place. That all those hundreds of thousands of ANC employees will, in any event, lose their jobs if that scenario has to play out.
No, of course. I mean, no doubt about that, because the ANC, as things stand, is the largest political party in this country, meaning that the ANC has a footprint in each and every province. So the ANC has a footprint throughout the length and the breadth of the country. So obviously, if they are ousted out of power, their members are going to be affected by that. So most people will lose their jobs, definitely. And also, it will be worse because, as I indicated earlier on, that the ANC is doing business with government. They have companies that are doing business with government. And sometimes, one of the things that emerged also at the Zondo Commission, I think it was Lucky Montana who testified about this, that sometimes the ANC, they summon CEOs of SOEs to dish out favors to the ANC so that the ANC can generate funds.
Yeah.
So all those privileges, they are going to lose them if they lose power subsequent to the electoral outcomes of the upcoming elections.
And obviously, that's the reason why a lot of people are wanting to get jobs in government, because they perceive it as being a gravy train. But clearly, the ANC's gravy train has stopped at a certain juncture and is not able to move forward because they are in dire straits. Your closing thoughts on the interview this morning?
Well, I think the political longevity or the political lifespan of liberation movements, at some point it tends to be affected by institutionalization of corruption. And the ANC is a case in point. I think the ANC has reached a point of no return. And unfortunately, it will have to suffer the consequences.
Dr. Ntsikelelo, breakfast political analyst, weighing in on the issue around the ANC thinking about selling off their assets to pay off a 500 million rand in liabilities, obviously. So that's a story we're going to be watching closely. Standing by to talk to us is Hanif Hendricks, president of Al Jamaa, and he is calling for equal pay for women leading up to the 16 days of activism. So do stay with us.